Red October is here. U.S. President Obama is actively working to begin the UN gun takeover starting next month. He is using the United Nations to do it, to take your guns.
Within days, the Obama administration is set to end the arrangement under which the U.S. government oversees the organization that assigns and coordinates the internet addresses that we all use every day.
Kind of thing, if it's not broke, why are we fixing it?
Well, now, when this transfers, it'll transfer to some other body, right? The supervision that we now have, or at least the oversight that we have as a government, will transfer to some international body. What is that?
Well, it'll still be ICANN, but what they're going to do then is open up, and they'll be, think of it a UN for the internet.
This is different than most of the sightings we've seen with the UN equipment. A lot of times they will be on the highway being hauled, on trains being hauled, similar to other military equipment. And often you will hear individuals saying, oh, they're being shipped out of the country or this and that. There's always some kind of excuse. We've also seen military equipment being staged at different businesses where you really shouldn't see them. And people say, oh, well, they have a contract with these people. Well, that right there should throw up huge red flags to you that someone like Kellogg's has a contract with the UN, staging equipment there. And it's not just vehicles. We now have UN containers, even marked UN, shipping containers.
There have been multiple civilian sightings of strange planes landing at American Air Force bases, all carrying UN troops and or having UN marking. The problem with these foreign troops, however, being trained to intervene on American soil is they have no loyalty to inherent rights we have as Americans. They also have no basis for restraint in any action they might perceive as necessary, regardless of our laws.
Kellogg's is staging massive amounts of UN equipment. It's not just armored vehicles. It's not just medical trucks. It's freight containers. It's tankers, as you can see here, where they can haul fuel and everything else here.
Obama made it quite clear in his UN farewell speech on September 16th that he embraced world government and, in fact, is impassioned on this. Pay close attention, friends, in the upcoming days and weeks, as many are now awakening to and wondering just what catastrophic event is this administration preparing to implement in order to seize the control they so desperately want.
Пекин. Все. 4 столицы. Больше никто ни на что влиять не может. И лишний игрок в международных отношениях. 4 столицы всегда договорятся. Обама, представитель Евросоюза, Медведев, представитель Китая. Все, они вчетвером договорятся. При этом китаец приедет в Москву, согласится с позицией Москвы. Европейцы приедут в Москву, согласятся с позицией Москвы. И американцы приедут в Москву, как Байден сейчас был. И обо всем договорятся. Проблем нету. Все решают только 4 столицы. При этом Вашингтон не имеет будущего. Америка искусственное государство рухнет. Европа старая, так сказать, уже континент, который никакой роли не играет. Китай на пороге взрыва. И остается космическая держава Россия. С огромными деньгами, ресурсами и новым оружием, о котором еще никто не знает. Любую часть планеты уничтожим в течение 15 минут. Ни одного взрыва, ни одного, так сказать, всплеска, там, луча какого-то лазерного, там, молния. Нет, тихо, спокойненько. Целые континенты будут спать вечным сном.
А может вы нам подробнее расскажете, как вы собираетесь это делать?
Все остальное. Вот цунами сейчас, Япония. Вы Курилы хотели? Вот вы будете разбирать обломки всех ваших зданий. И сдохните все 120 миллионов, если вы еще потребуете Курила от нас. Так и все остальные пусть подумают о своем будущем. О своем будущем пусть думают. Тоже мне еще грузинские вина и там какие-то наблюдатели. А не хотите, чтобы забыли слово Грузия в мире? И будет русско-турецкая граница. Вот подумайте, пускай Саакашвили об этом. То цунами будет другое. В другой части Кавказа.
Russia has once again criticized the United States policies in Syria as tensions between the two countries keeps escalating. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharov said that the U.S. direct aggression against Syrian forces would lead to, quote, frightening tectonic shifts in the Middle East. Moscow and Washington are at odds over the conflict in Syria. The U.S. has threatened to suspend talks with Russia on Syria because of the ongoing airstrikes, especially in Aleppo. Russia says the threat shows that Washington supports terrorism, urging the White House to separate militants that it supports from the terrorist groups.
In May 2016, we learned that the National Earthquake Conference was referring to the San Andreas Fault as being locked, loaded, and ready to roll. Now, the U.S. Geological Survey is saying there are increased odds. Originally the odds were pinned to 1 in 3,000 but have been revised to 1 in 100 of a magnitude 7 or greater earthquake being triggered on the southern San Andreas Fault through Tuesday, October the 4th. An earthquake advisory has been issued for residents and officials in Ventura, San Diego, San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange, Los Angeles, Kern and Imperial counties, all along the southern section of the San Andreas Fault, to be prepared. Numerous small earthquakes erupted near the Salton Sea for about 24 continuous hours at the beginning of this week, and more than 200 earthquakes were recorded. The LA Times reports that this has happened only twice since 1932, and this has been the largest swarm of earthquakes yet.
Overnight, one of the most powerful Atlantic hurricanes in almost a decade pounded more of the Caribbean, Matthew slamming into southern Haiti and drenching parts of Jamaica, triggering life-threatening flash floods. The coast of Colombia and Aruba seeing monster surf. Winds peaked at 160 miles an hour. This morning, Matthew is a violent Category 4 hurricane, washing away roads, homes, and bridges. Eastern Cuba also bracing for a direct hit. More than 500,000 people in Matthew's path. At the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, non-essential employees have been evacuated. But it is impoverished Haiti struggling to rebuild after the massive earthquake 6 years ago that is also facing the most devastation. Up to 40 inches of rain in some areas could spawn deadly mudslides. The toll, some fear, would be catastrophic.
You have to pay attention.
All interests along the East Coast need to pay attention to Matthew.
Is this disturbance going to impact the United States?
Big changes that last couple of days here, bringing much more of the southeastern U.S. into play. Heads up.
Hey, have you ever heard of sprites before? That's what you're looking at right here, and I've got to tell you, these couple of pictures here have to be some of the better examples I've ever seen of actual sprites that have been photographed. Now, these sprites are associated with Hurricane Matthew. They were taken from Puerto Rico from a distance, and there's a reason why you can see them from a distance. That's probably the only way that you'd be able to see them. First of all, let me just talk about a little bit, at least what we know about sprites, okay? And there's still a lot of research to be done. Here's just a little example from a little while ago that was taken from the ISS, so this is not actually from Hurricane Matthew, but look at the cloud top here, okay? So you've got lightning that's going on in the thunderstorm. This is probably about a 40 to 50,000 foot tall storm, and then look how high above that the sprite is actually happening. So we know that the sprite is happening at the same time as the lightning. It's associated with that positive discharge, the cloud to ground lightning that's going on, but the sprite happens about 30 to 50 miles high up in the air. Now, Hurricane Matthew is really far away from Puerto Rico right now, okay? So remember, those pictures were taken from Puerto Rico, looking toward the south and west. That's probably the only reason he could see the sprites in the first place, okay? Because if the storm was right on top of him, think about it, you wouldn't be able to see above the storm, but from that distance, you can see that. Let's take a look at those pictures one more time, Mike. They are absolutely amazing. Just soak that up. Not very often you get to see pictures like this. That is incredible stuff.
Your major alert for Florida, Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti. Weather warfare at its finest right here. You guys are all in the direct path of just monsoon amount of rain, 40 inches of rain, surge. Now you only have a couple days until the storm is upon you guys. We can see the pulse waves that are being blasted into the storm to keep it. They were trying to make the storm go north and east, but it didn't happen, even with the major pulse waves that they've been hitting it with. They tried their best, but apparently it didn't work.
Okay, and I don't know how well you guys can see the title of this article right here, but let me just share with you. Moscow prepared for possible nuclear attack. Now, we have, another friend sent it on my email as well, not the Pravda report, but another report, very serious there. We're seeing, I believe it's Associated Press, as well as another news article that is speaking about, I think it's the Gazeta, that is stating that Russia on October 4th through the 7th will be doing an underground bunkers drill for 3 days, moving 40 million people into underground bunkers. According to Pravda's report right here, it says as a result, underground shelters in Moscow meant for the evacuation of people in case of a nuclear attack or other emergencies were prepared and will be able to accommodate the entire population of the capital. As a result, the introduction of a new approach to civil defense and inventory of underground facilities of the city was conducted. The Moscow underground facilities will be able to protect 100% of the population and will be able to protect 100%, and just kind of simplify some things for you guys. What is going on? Russia, and I believe it's Associated Press, is already stating that they are very concerned that Washington has been doing quite a bit of an aggressive posturing regarding a nuclear attack, and we are concerned about a preemptive strike. Secret recordings by John Kerry that was done with some Syrians not too long ago, just within the last week, and that Washington, it does disclose that Washington, through John Kerry's own words, is preparing some alternative measures regarding Syria. So I think that what we're looking at is that everything is going to break loose in Syria, but it could easily spread into Europe as well and maybe even affect the United States. As a result, John Kerry says in the secret leaked recordings that he had there that they were plans looked at going in and taking out all of Russia's defense system in Syria first in order to control the skies over Syria. Of course, we know how this will turn out if something like this happens, and I think that's what the United States is prepared for as well. If they go in there and try to take out Russia, all their air defense and their planes inside of Syria, but you didn't mention anything about the planes, taking out the planes, other than what we know that was stated early by Kirby, who said that planes would actually could be coming down and more Russians would be sent home in body bags. But John Kerry clearly made it known that they were growing weary with trying to deal with Russia and trying to get Bashar al-Assad out of power. That is the main objective of the U.S.
Extremist groups will continue to exploit the vacuums that are there in Syria to expand their operations, which will include, no question, attacks against Russian interests, perhaps even Russian cities. And Russia will continue to send troops home in body bags. Here at the State Department, the Secretary is still committed to a diplomatic solution. There are other options that don't revolve around the act of diplomacy.
Looking at the events that followed the ceasefire, how is it fair to say that Russia is solely responsible for the failure of this deal?
Because, and we've said this many, many times, they have influence on Assad. I didn't make that up.
Are you saying that you don't have influence with the rebels?
We do, and so do some of our allies and partners as well.
And if the U.S. does have influence with these rebel groups, why the hundreds of ceasefire violations? Why did that happen?
We have influence over some, not all. We have there are
largest rebel group just refused to abide by that deal.
There are other nations that have influence, and again, we have admitted that not all the opposition groups on every single day completely abided by it.
Can you admit that part of the responsibility for the failure of this deal lies with the rebels and with the U.S.?
I think we've been nothing but honest about the fact that there have been violations of the ceasefire and the cessation of hostilities on all sides.
The U.S. has expressed grave concern over what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen by hitting civilian targets there. Why isn't the U.S. threatening to cut ties with Saudi Arabia?
We have, the Secretary talked about this when we were in Jeddah a few weeks ago. We have been honest with the Saudis about our concerns over the lack of precision in some strikes. And we've talked to them about the importance of
conducting investigations.
But Saudi Arabia is doing there what Russia is accused of doing in Syria. So I'm
no.
How is that consistent?
Because what we're seeing the Russians do, and I would love to see you ask your government some of these questions. You know, Russia today never does that. You never poke and prod your own government.